Standoff.
Chris,
Yeah.
I painted my wall.
Chris, I like your sign too.
Yeah,
This
Chris
sign's
finally
awesome.
painted his wall. Welcome to the.
Well, hey
Welcome to the
guys,
room.
welcome to the January kickoff for Redroom. We are fortunate to have Tracy Royce. She has decided to join the Redroom as a co-host. So this is going to be super beneficial for us because she's the expert flipper. I do my own flipping myself, but she has got it all dialed in. And if you follow her on her Instagram, you will see all the tips and tricks that you need to know about flipping. With that said, it is 2025, and this show is about flipping in 2025. But just a little market update. Those of you that watched the show last year, obviously our inventory in Phoenix was at like 14,000, went all the way up to 21,000, dipped in late December to like 19,000. So inventory actually came down. But as always, what happens in January, people just start listing their properties, right? They don't want to really list them in December. So we just popped back over 20,000. I kind of see it just staying there until we get some momentum in this market. Now, January, I call it when football ends. We probably need another week until I think a week from Monday, you'll really start to see some traction in the real estate market. Although, don't
say after the Vikings get eliminated. All right, don't say that.
How do you say that without saying it? Yeah.
So I'm gonna do a little share screen real quick and just and let you kind of see what I'm talking about. That's the share screen. And all right, this is my favorite conversation, right? You guys probably get tired of this, but let's see. Tell me when it comes up, guys.
Yeah, it's on there.
We can see it.
All right. So here's what we got. Here's our level today. Here's the last year, and here's the level. I mean, we are right there at the highest interest rates in the last 12 months. I mean, same thing in May of last year, but
Chris, it's not showing a chart. It's just showing the homepage.
Yeah. The US 10-year.
Let me go back and hit the
it's frozen on the US 10-year treasury.
All right. Now is it back to us?
Yep.
Yes.
All right. Boom.
We want to nerd out with you.
All right.
Absolutely.
Share screen.
I don't have this knowledge that Chris has for this.
All right.
I need to learn.
We're just simpletons.
There it is. Yep.
We just tell people where to hang chandeliers.
You can see that today we're at like 469, and you see this other mountain here in May.
Yeah.
Kind of the same. I mean, that's 4.6. What was the high point? 4.7. I mean, we were right there at the highest. I mean, end of April, similar. Here we got down in 3.6, which brought the interest rates down in like the high 5, and now we're probably sitting at 7. And so, I kind of thought this was a good topic to bring Tracy on, although she's going to be a co-host, but I thought it was a good time to just talk about flipping in 2025 because, I mean, with buyer demand probably being lower than normal if interest rates weren't the highest it were in 12 months, right? You're going to need to do it right to make money. Like, who wants to flip a house and not make money? Like, that's no fun, right? I mean, we've all done it. I've done it. Or even worse, to flip a house and write a check.
There's so many people that do that though, Chris, and then they almost brag about it. I lost $30,000 on this house, but at least I learned something. I'm like, okay, that's one way to go about it. Or you could not do that and actually try to make money off of it.
Yeah.
All right. So we know
I'm guilty from 202022, though. I will say that.
Yeah. I mean, that's a blip, man. I'm talking about people that don't even underwrite or take any of this into consideration.
Yes. That go off of just wholesalers' numbers every time.
Just vibes. Yeah.
All right. So
right.
With that being said, Tracy, give us the most important tip that you think is, what's going to help people in 2025? Number one tip. Let's go.
Yeah. Well, let's start with what you talked about. I think that's a great starting point. The visual that comes to mind. Have you guys ever watched The Office or seen the meme where they're standing in the main office and they're all standing with each other, like pointing the fake guns at each other, like someone's waiting to do something. It became a meme. And that's kind of what comes to mind with the inventory levels and demand and interest rates. It felt like people are standing around and waiting. Are we going to have more inventory come to the market? Is buyer demand going to tick up? Are interest rates going to go down? And everyone's like pointing the pistols at everyone else saying, what's the move?
What's next?
What do we do? What are the other parties going to do that would make me feel good about what I can do or how I should operate, whether you're a buyer, an investor, or even an agent, right? Everyone's been affected. So it's not different. And it weighs on us even more because we have to read the tea leaves for 3, 4, 5 months out, depending on your scope of what you're doing. So I think that's a really good topic to start with. And how do you operate not knowing that? We're 7 days into January, and it's going to be an indication of how the next quarter, if not the remainder of the year, plays out. What do you think about that part of it? Or do you think spring's going to set the whole vibe for the rest of the year? Or
well, I still think seasonality is a huge part of the real estate market. And when you get into COVID and interest rates in the 3 to 4s, like everybody forgot about seasonality, right? It was just for 18 months or 24 months, everybody was just running and gunning, right?
Yeah.
They couldn't make a mistake. But now, I mean, this last election year brought seasonality all into a completely different environment when you get seasonality with an election year and it just cools, right?
Yeah.
So now that pent up energy, do we see, even though we have the highest interest rates in 12 months, does that pent up energy of not everybody pushing the pause button for 4 months,
right,
that run forward, or do we?
I think my opinion is the answer is yes. I think that you have too many people that were sitting waiting on the sidelines for too long. And I think that you're going to have, even though interest rates did go up again, I just think that people are emotional. And I think that when you're emotional and, obviously you're coming out of like you just said, a tough 4 months, I think that you're going to have people wanting to make moves immediately. And I was noticing at the end of December, even on some of the phone calls, my sales calls that I was making. And I think that it's going to be the exact same thing this first quarter, because again, it's like you said, it's seasonal. This is something that happens every single year, without fail. The first quarter is our best quarter. And so, I don't see that stopping just because interest rates went up a little bit again. I think that you have enough people that are just kind of overweighting on the sideline and they're ready to rock it.
Yeah. So that said,
go ahead.
So that leads me to your question. I wasn't trying to skirt around that. I really think like the first thought that came to mind was just really running this like a business and dialing in your systems, and obviously buy box is very important, but just your strategy and your systems, your product, making sure that you're underwriting deep enough to be able to weather all of this, but also just being more systematic about what it is that we're doing. Because regardless of, if interest rates go up or down, people, and not to oversimplify it, but people still want well renovated, nice looking, solid houses. So how do we absorb that? And how do we actually profit from that as investors? And the fundamentals have always been important, but I think moving into 2025, if you're a solo operator and you've never done a flip before, gosh, guys, one of the biggest things that comes to mind is I wouldn't step into this market and try to go it alone.
No, yeah.
If I could add value to someone else's business or tap into someone else's system to learn, I'd be happy to give away equity or my time, or, try to get a couple deals under my belt through contract assignments and maybe shadowing someone. But I don't think that, in as much as I say, hey, dial in your systems, do this, for us operators that have been established, that's a really more important thing. For those of you listening that might be interested in getting into flipping, it's always a good time, but it is not a good time for you to read a blog post, go to a meetup, go off of the vibes of what a wholesaler says it's worth and try to go it alone, because I think that this is a really bad environment to just wing it.
Yeah. And I think, like you said, with a first time, if it's going to be a first time investor where it is getting into a flip or, just kind of learning the ins and outs of jumping in, like you said. I think that, we have a lot of wholesalers that will reach out, whether it's wholesalers or if it's agents that are, getting into the investment side, the investment world, whatever it is.
Yeah.
A lot of times they're going to say, well, at least what we hear is, how can we partner together? Like, where does it make sense? And, it's kind of back to that same thing. It's all about value, right? Like, where can you bring value? For us, what we always say is where you can bring value to someone who is doing a lot of flips or someone who has a good track record of flips is, what is the hardest thing to find? It's an off-market good deal.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because the thing is, you can't, not that you can't, but it's harder to bring someone like Tracy, like you. It's hard for someone to say, hey, I brought like a construction guy that I think is going to help out. Because you're like, I already have that in place. I don't need that.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, so what is the value? The value is in someone bringing that deal to the table. That is a deal. That is a true deal, that instead of them deciding to wholesale it and make 5K or 10K or whatever it is, them saying, well, you look at this, you look at it and say, yeah, this is absolutely a deal. Okay, well, can we flip this together? I just want to learn it in that sense. And then, maybe they bring some money to the table. Maybe they don't, kind of how we've done it in the past is that, if you do bring money to the table, then, and you brought the deal, then we'll run the whole construction side of it and we can go like a 50-50 partnership. Or it's like, if they're not going to bring money to the table and they just want to bring the deal, but they want to learn the whole way, then you can kind of work out splits. I mean, that all depends on however you want to structure it. But I think, for people that are joining this podcast right now, where it's like, okay, how can I get involved? That is the number one thing, is provide value to whoever you're going to go to and say, hey, this is, I believe, a deal. That's what makes the most sense with us, at least.
What's funny is, like, having said that, like, what's the student's number one thing? Like, what do I do if I get a deal, right?
Yeah.
If you get it,
heaven forbid.
If you get a deal,
if I accidentally stumble across a deal,
they're so intimidated by the thought. Yeah.
What do I do? But what if I get the deal and I can't sell it? If you get a deal, you'll get it sold.
Yeah, for sure.
If you present it to the right guys, it'll go away.
Yeah, no question about it.
Well, and Luke, the thing, what you're saying behind what you're saying is another big tip that I have for this year, which is really relationships.
Yeah.
And as much as, you might be the best underwriter, you might be the best hard money lender, you might be the best contractor. I have seen more people sort of be open to the idea of collaboration, if not looking at it like, hey, things have changed. All of us are multi-talented, but we can't do everything ourselves. And so if we open up to the community and say, hey, there's strategic ways that we can work together, what does that look like? Even if it's a one-off, like that example that you gave, maybe that agent or wholesaler doesn't shadow you, but they 2X or 3X what it was that they were going to make for their profit,
Yeah, for sure.
That's a huge amount of value. And of course, they're going to think of you first on the next one. But I think that the people, whether you're new or even experienced, and maybe especially the experienced people, is how do we collaborate? How do we maybe add some value to each other? What does that look like? Doesn't have to be full time. It can be strategic. But if you were to be open to that, what would it look like? And what value would you bring such that it's complementary to what they need and don't already have? For sure.
And I think that's a great point. I think another thing on that is, if you look at, say we're talking with agents now, right? Because I mean, a lot of agents, watch this as well. So if you're talking agents, a lot of times when you have a property that is potentially going to go on the market, or maybe it's already on the market, and then you want to bring that to, a flipper, you might say, what is the best way to go about this with partnering? Well, a lot of times those deals are going to be tight, right? Because it's already on the market. So when those deals are tight, another thing that again, this is just a tip for agents that you can do is push this out to flippers and then just say, hey, you know what? Maybe this doesn't make a ton of sense for a wholesale, or maybe it's really tight as a flip. But how about I get you, I work to get you the best number that I can get you on this, but then you let me double end it. Once you finish flipping it, let me list it.
Sure.
So, I mean, that's not necessarily something where it's like, it's got to be funds up front, or it's not anything that has to be taken care of right off the bat. But at the same time, as a agent, it should make sense to you, because you're getting your commission on the front side, and then you're also going to get a commission on the back side. And so that's another way to, to reach out to flippers and say, hey, I'm going to bring you this deal. Can we work something out in this sense?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So Tracy, with the kind of market maybe slowing, maybe not slowing, obviously it's January, it's going to be better than it was this fall, but do you do anything with days on market? Are like If it's 60 and under, you're gonna grab that one. If it's 60 and over, you flat pass. Even if it is like got a lower, cost or LTV. What do you think on that?
Are you talking about plucking stuff off the MLS that's been sitting?
No, just wherever you buy your product, whether it's a wholesaler or it's MLS, let's just say we had a similar 6 months to this 6 months, just everything's kind of slower. Do you go and just say, hey, I'm only going to buy in neighborhoods that got a 45-day or less days on market, a 60 days less days on market?
Yeah. So I actually always underwrite for 120 to 150 days. The difficult thing about days on market too is it's always retroactive. Whereas by the time that we go on market, it might be a quarter later, right? 2-3 months later, depending on the scope, unless you're super cosmetic. And then it's a little bit more arguable to condense that timeline and match it with what you saw to buy it. But I think that it's healthy to at least underwrite stuff for 120 days, just from start to finish. So maybe 150 days if you add a little bit more time on market. But I don't take it as gospel wherever I'm pulling comps, unless it's such an obvious trend, regardless of the time of year. Right now, I'm only pulling comps within the last 90 days. If I can get 3, 4, 5 comps out of that, I don't feel like it's healthy to go back further than that. I rather have a closer time shot than not. So if it's really, really obvious that that's what it's going to be, great. But I still don't bank on that literally and figuratively, that if I go over that another 15, 30 days, that it's going to kill the deal, right? I think it's healthy to have a buffer in there for time on market regardless, knowing that it's again, you can't really pair up what happened in the past with the time of market that you're going to put it on.
Yeah, that's extremely smart to make sure you're putting a buffer in there, because kind of like we said before, a lot of times when people are coming in and they're only, if they're just going to say, no, this is going to be 90, it's going to be gone in 90 days. Like, okay, well, if it's not gone in 90 days and it goes to 150 days, you just lost a decent amount on those extra 2 months. So it's smart to plan those numbers based off of being safer.
Well, and in the same vein, so when I pull comps, and we talk about this all the time in flip school, it's not just what was the gross price and what did this sell for. Over the last year and a half, I've been encouraging and telling the students, go into the listing history and look at what are the concessions that they've been paying. Yeah. It's a different ballgame now that the concessions are batched in with whatever commissions that they might have been given. And I don't think that you can parse out, hey, they got paid 2.5% and then they gave, 3% in concessions. It might just show as, 5 or 6% concessions. But it's important to know what their net actually was, considering if you're paying 2.5% to buyers agents and maybe a 3% in concessions, because that could really change what your net actually is. And if you do see a trend with that, and I almost just buffer it in, even if it's a flat fee of $3,000 in concessions. But if that trend is showing my 3 other comps are paying 3% in concessions, what do you think I'm underwriting my deal to be?
Right.
100%. 100%. I like that.
And that's back to Chris's point with the interest rates. I mean, I think that that's a big consideration to just figure as a cost. I just figure I'm going to have to help this buyer with a rate buy down. And in fact, everyone adopted that late 2022, like, hey, let us help you do a rate buy down. So what do we need to do as operators to just underwrite in a different and better way to have these adjustments just as part of the model?
I think another thing that people need to do is they need to, really look at every angle of, when you are underwriting, because what you're saying that, in the sense again of if you're looking at, comps in a specific neighborhood. I remember there was a time last year where we were deciding if we wanted to do a flip in Eastmark. And at this point, when we looked, there was like 107 actives in Eastmark in a specific neighborhood in Mesa. And so, you just have to expect that things are going to sit on the market a lot longer when you have that many actives in a neighborhood.
Was there like radioactive soil or something? What happened?
I am telling you, I have no idea, but we looked and it was the most insane thing I've ever seen, because we also had a friend that was selling a house in there and it was like, it's just not moving. And I'm like, oh my God, the amount of actives that are in here are insane. But then again, you'll go to other neighborhoods, that will blow your mind, because, we focus obviously on specific areas that we like. And one of the specific areas that we looked at, even when things were slow, we looked at the actives of when we would buy a flip in this neighborhood. And there would be like within a 8 mile, or not 8 miles, like an 8 block radius, there would be like 2 actives, and it would be like 2 or, 3 that were UCB. And it's like, those are things that you, as you do it longer, you learn like, okay, it's probably smarter to make sure you stay in those areas where, where you're not going to have a ridiculous amount of competition.
Yeah.
Because that's, Chris, this we talked about all last year, but how we were underwriting our deals last year is we were undercutting the market. We were trying to have the nicest house and the lowest price. Cause as difficult as that is to do, that's how you knew it was actually going to move fairly quickly.
Sure.
So with that, what about pricing? Is your goal to have a finished product still better priced than what's sitting there for like 120 days, for instance, or how do you price your properties?
Well, I think that there's a difference between better priced and attractively priced, and that can be nuanced with what's likely to move this, and then also what have you done to make this product attractive? Are people excited to get in the car and go look at it? Because you guys know, like, you've done flips where people come back and they're like, man, I love this, but it's outside of where I normally would buy a house, or I just wanted to come see it because it's like, this came up on my radar. It's not exactly what I wanted, but it's so gorgeous, or it has this feature or whatever it was. So I think when you're pairing up against, is this going to move? There's qualitative things that you should take into consideration rather than just the quantitative. Now, that being said, obviously we're not overpricing things, but I think the operative word is attractive. What's going to raise their eyebrow to say, oh, this is a gorgeous house. All these other, wannabe flippers or rehabbers are kind of doing half-assed, updating, hodgepodge, cheap bull stuff. I don't know if I can cuss.
No, you can say it. Yeah, you're good.
Such a bad swear word. My God. And then when they see something that's really well executed, I've always been really transparent about the fact that I'm not high volume. I am more of a boutique flipper, as it were, and I put a lot of pride in my product, but there's a tendency to get a premium for that. Things move faster. So if it takes me a week longer to get to market, but I get, 2 weeks or a month shaved off of my, closing time, then that's the trade-off. 100%. So, we're always checking, like, honestly, I'm checking comps almost week by week on rehabs before I go to market and saying, what did this one close at? What is this one listed at? Why is it still listed? How does mine compare to that? Is it a little bit better? Price per square foot. I know some people are anti that, but I will take that into consideration. So what is the price that I think would get people excited and say, hey, honey, we gotta text our agent right now. Let's set up a listing appointment.
Yeah. I like that.
So, on the remodel stuff, like when you get kind of new students, do you have them kind of go more to the cosmetic stuff or like start cosmetic, get your feet wet, or obviously jumping into removing walls, redoing electrical, moving some plumbing is probably not.
Yeah, I'm not trying to give them a heart attack. I want my students to live. I really encourage them to go with entry-level cosmetic deals. Now, that could look like a condo, that could look like a townhouse. Yeah, that might look like something that's just like a baby flip, as we like to call it. Not as intimidating. And what's funny is when students do those, they're like, this is still a lot. And I'm like, yep, that's kind of the nature of the business when you don't understand how many, we all know one room is 1,000 decisions that have to be made, right? If you're like, let's just take the kitchen in consideration. It really gives you an appreciation from studs to staging, what all goes into rehabbing a property, how much knowledge you have to have, and how many mistakes can be made from the in between. So I do encourage them to do something really cosmetic as possible, just to get their feet wet. They still follow a process. There's procedures, there's timelines, there's resources that I give them. So a really good example that I like to make is like in waitressing and serving. You do the same thing when you're really slow at the restaurant and clean in between, make sure everything's organized. So that way, when you get rush hour, you don't lose your cool and do everything differently and you're spilling soup on people and losing your mind and in the weeds. There's a process, there's a procedure, you follow the system. And as you do that more in quantity, that's when you get better. That's when you refine. That's when you get relaxed and your personality comes out and you can design a little bit better and you pick up great deals. So that was a long-winded way of saying, yes, I really encourage them to just take on something manageable to begin with, to get their feet wet, get organized. Typically they're paying off debt and then they get really excited on their second, third, fourth flip.
I think that's a great idea too, because, like you said, they're safer. They're not, condos and townhomes, they're not going to be as, they might not make as much money, like as much money. You might not have that home run deal on a condo and a townhome because you are fairly capped to an extent, of course. But at the same time, if it's your very first one, you want something that's going to be less volatile, something that's going to be more safe. That you're like, okay, maybe I only end up making 10K on this.
Yeah.
But like if your range is like, okay, if this doesn't go well at all, but I still make 10 and it wasn't that difficult, or if it does go perfect as I want it to go and I make 45 or 50 or whatever it is, you'd rather have that for your first one than, okay, well, I could make 80, but I could also lose 40 on my very first deal. Because it's like, you can't have that on your first deal. You can't afford it. It's going to be a fun game.
Let's just, absolutely. And I had one student comes to mind that she has full-time job. She's a wife. She's a mom, had never done this before in her life. And within 6 months, and within flip school, she got her first deal. It was a condo. And she was like, this is kind of more than I expected. And it was still really cosmetic, but by virtue of her not being experienced, it's just a lot of decision-making and learning curve. But yeah, she made like 15K on that. Nothing crazy, and great, they're already under contract on their next one.
That's great. Because exactly, I've seen your, what you post obviously. And it's like you said, that one extra deal can literally change someone's life. That one extra deal that because then it turns that one extra deal that, like you just said, you make 15K, but now that 15K is, able to be put away for if you want to keep doing it and do another one in another, next quarter or whatever it is. Or if you want to, 15K is a lot of money. So it's like, you can go pay off your car, or you can go, do whatever it is that you need to do. So it's like, those are life-changing flips, even the 15K flips.
Yeah. Right. But that could have been 15K in 6 months. So if you do it over a year, now it's 30 grand a year.
Yeah.
30 grand a year is, someone's college or.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
1000%. Yeah. And it's still equally, if not more important to even on a baby flip. Again, I'll reiterate some of the points that I was making before, to team up with people or plug into a system or maybe partner with someone or maybe JV, assign, whatever, to get your exposure, because it's still a business. And to Chris's point, when things were just nonstop, 20% month over month, nothing can go wrong. Nothing can go wrong. It really spoiled anyone that had gotten into the market at this point. And I, for one, am, I think it's healthy to cull the herd so the professional operators can deliver a good product. Because at the end of the day, it's like, we're not selling fun widgets. We are providing housing for people, and they deserve a good product. I'm not saying everything has to be high-end finishes, but what I am saying is that, there's a remarkable disregard for what we're actually affecting in the community. And if we're not investing in what it is that we're doing, someone's paying the price. And that typically has been the end buyer and their families and their kids' tuitions and whatever else they're tapping into to pay off the repairs that weren't done correctly. So that said, you do have to buy at a good price, put out a good product, but the more dialed in you are to your pricing, there's that happy medium of, I can still put out a good product and make a ton of money doing this stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And you see it from neighbors of houses that you're flipping, right? You talk to neighbors, and neighbors are always happy that you're flipping the house. They're always happy. Obviously they don't like the noise and maybe the construction.
I was just about to say,
that's the only thing that they don't like for maybe, whatever it is, 2-3 months. But once that house sells, everyone knows that's shooting their house prices through the roof. So it's like, they're always happy.
Yeah. Just kind of beg for forgiveness in the meantime.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Please don't call the city on me.
Luke.
Exactly.
That's what painter's plastic is for, brother.
Yep, exactly. There's no doubt about it.
Yep.
Well, any last tips for anybody? You can find Tracy on Instagram, and she'll be on this. She hasn't committed to all the shows, but she'll be on here regularly. And what's great about having 3 of us, so you'll see more of the Red Room, episode 87 this time, more of the Red Room in 2025 as we continue down the road. The third Tuesday is obviously the Phoenix RIA live at Orange Tree. We'll be back there for 8 events this year. So if you want to come out and network, like Tracy said, my entire relationship in this business has been networking. So I didn't have all these cool tools like Instagram and Facebook and all that fun stuff. So, meeting people, shaking their hands. But any last tips, Tracy? What do you got?
I would say a lot of the conversations that I have with just networking or people that are interested in flip school or just casual, conversations, being in the industry is if you feel compelled to really make a difference in 2025 and you've been sitting on the sidelines thinking, man, I know a couple flips could really change my life, but I'm super intimidated, or I work in the industry and everyone seems smarter than me and they have everything figured out and I don't know how to get my deals funded, or I don't know about construction. There really is a way that you can put this together, but you have to be able to commit to the process. It's not overnight where you're going to become a millionaire, but you'd be surprised how capable that you really are when you have someone that you can borrow their confidence from to get you to your first deal. And then once you do that, it changes everything. So if you are interested in having a conversation around that, please reach out to me on Instagram or just follow me, scroll some of my content, and, just see what's available if you give yourself a little bit of faith and invest in yourself to be able to get to your first rehab and make those 5-figure paychecks.
There you go.
Heck yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks for jumping on with us, Trace. We'll see you next week. We'll be here probably every week, except obviously the third Tuesday. We're not here because I'm setting up for the RIA. But I think next week we have the self-directed IRA people on here. So obviously that's a great topic. I always keep 2 or 3 flips going in my self-directed. So not only is my retirement growing, but it's growing tax-free, which is obviously beneficial as well. Sometimes I might book some of the rehab on my normal expenses. So my 401k grows even faster.
Luke, are you hearing that Chris is going to buy another boat? That's all I got from that, really.
Yeah, that's what I heard too.
Yeah. What's he going to name that boat? What's he going to name that one?
It's funny.
That just sounds like Steelers tickets to me.
I did close on a new boat in November, and I got rid of the old boat. It was called Today's Office, and I didn't go. I went to Today's Office too. I'm not very creative.
How about Better Office View or something like that? Yeah, Office Views.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, thanks for jumping on. We'll see you next week.
Thank you so much, guys.
Good.